All right. Today's presenter is Dr. Vola Ambinintsoa. Her presentation title is Every Learner is Different, a Personal Perspective. Please begin.
Okay, hello everyone and welcome to this presentation. My name is Dominique Ambinintsoa. You can call me Vola. Today I'm going to present this topic, Every Learner is Different, a Personal Perspective. I work at Kanda University of International Studies, and this is the photo of our building. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about how I came up with the idea of reflecting on my own language learning. It is not from the literature, although I learned a lot about reflection in the past. Then I will talk about self-reflection, regulating motivation, and self-advising tools that I used on myself. And finally, I will give some implications for teachers. I work as a learning advisor, so I get many questions from my students. And most of these questions are how-to questions, like how to improve my listening, how to memorize vocabulary, how to speak like a native speaker, how to be good at writing, how to find motivation to read in English, how to manage my time, how to improve my English, lots and lots of how-to questions. And the students expect me to just say, okay, you want to improve your listening? Okay, do this then. You want to memorize your vocabulary? Do this. But how it's not what I give them as an answer. Instead, I say it depends because every learner is different. And after that, we will engage in what we call reflective dialogue, in which I help them to reflect more about themselves, about their ways of learning, about their real difficulties, and they will find their solutions by themselves at the end. Then there are some students who come to see me because they know that I have learned a few languages. I can speak 3 languages. So they come to see me to really ask how I learned those languages. So they want to know what materials I used, how I got the motivation to learn the languages, and how I learned vocabulary, etc., etc. And when I got those questions, it was not easy to answer. And I asked the questions to myself. How did I learn languages before? How am I learning Japanese now? Because now I'm learning Japanese. How do I feel about learning Japanese? Is it the same feeling as when I learned English and the other languages? Am I motivated to learn it? Is it the same motivation as when I learned English and the other languages? What are the differences and what are the reasons for the differences? And what is my real issue with learning Japanese? Because I had a real issue with it. And these questions triggered some self-reflection. When it comes to me, it was difficult to know where to start. And I had to think about what I know about language learning. Definitely, I know the importance of learner autonomy because I spent 3 years to just write a thesis on that for my PhD. So I know about learner autonomy, I know about motivation and interest, reflection, goal setting, self-evaluation, monitoring my progress, which are all related to learner autonomy. And I also know the importance of intentional reflective dialogue, because that is what I do with my students. But the thing is, I know all of those things, and it is always easy to talk about these with students. and to try to promote these with students. When it comes to me, I didn't know where to start. So I was kind of lost at the beginning. I had to think about it. I had to think about my relationship with each language that I learned. And I concluded that everyone has their own language learning journey. And the relationship with each language can be quite different. So the interest is different, motivation is different, goal, emotion, ways to learn, belief, context. These can be all different for each language that you learn. People say that if you are able to learn one language, you can learn others, but I don't think it's true. It's all different, so you cannot just assume that you can learn more languages. So I came up with this table when I tried to reflect on the interest, motivation, goal, emotions, ways to learn. I decided to compare the three languages that I chose to learn. I'm not going to talk about my two first languages because they are different stories as well. So these were at the time I started to learn. So my interest for English was great. I really loved English songs. I liked American movies. I was pretty motivated because I thought it was a cool international language. Where I was, it was not spoken by many people I knew, so I wanted to be one of the people who could do it. My ultimate goal at that time was to have a job involving English, and my emotions were quite positive. I really enjoyed it, and I was satisfied with what I was learning, and I was sure that I was good at it. And I had lots of ways to learn. I took courses, I read different books, I used grammar books, I listened to the BBC every single night. I watched the BBC News every day, and I practiced speaking as often as I could. I translated songs. I did so many things in order for my English to improve. And the context was in Madagascar, and I was in a language center. For German, I was fascinated by the pronunciation, and also the motivation was not many people learned it. So I wanted to be one of the people who could do it as well. And my ultimate goal at that time was to win a trip to Germany, because that was the reward. If I was, sorry, if we are able to finish the 6 years of German study at the Goethe Institute where I was, and we are the first student, we can win a trip to Germany. So I was pretty confident that I could do that. And I was sure that I would be able to master it. And I took courses, I used textbooks and other grammar and vocabulary books, but I was not as active as I was with English though. And the context was Madagascar, a language center as well. For Japanese, it's a whole different story. I was not really sure about the interest, and I did not have any motivation at all. My goal was very vague. It was to be able to communicate, but with who, for what, I was not sure. I was frustrated. I felt that I was incompetent and I was amotivated. I felt there was no way I can learn it. It was too hard. And I just used Duolingo at that time. That was 1 year ago. The context was Japan and at home. So even though I was in Japan, my motivation was not high at all. So I had to think about why is it so hard to find the motivation for Japanese? And I realized that it was a motivation, which is defined as absence of intention to take actions due to a lack of perceived competence and a lack of interest or value. I thought I was not competent enough. It was too hard for me. And also, I did not really see the value because I didn't need it for my job. I could still travel without really understanding it or speaking it. So I thought I don't really need it. And McLaughlin said, if something is new and comprehensible, we tend to find it interesting. However, if it is new and incomprehensible, it is merely confusing and potentially infuriating. And that was really what I felt. It was so incomprehensible to me. There is no logic in anything. So I was infuriated and I was so confused. To regulate motivation, McLaughlin said that we should set goals and monitor progress in reaching the goals. I know that very well because this is what I promote to my students. And we can also try to find interest and develop that interest. It was hard for me to find interest because I was not interested in anything. I was not interested in manga or things like that. So there was no interest to develop actually. And I was not willing to set goals. There was lots of resistance. So what I did was I practiced self-reflection. And I took the time. I started to learn Japanese and then I stopped and took the time to think about all the resistance and the causes of the resistance. And I stepped back from language learning and reflected on what really matters to me. And once I did that, I tried to relate what was important to me to the language learning and try to think about the place of the language in my life, what it would mean to me to be able to speak and understand the language. And most importantly, I acknowledged learning as a process. This is something that I do with my students all the time. I always tell them to be patient with their learning. It is a process, so it is developing, they're improving. But with me, I did not have much patience and I did not really acknowledge that. So I tried to speak to myself as I would speak to my advisors. And that means I became non-judgmental to me. To reflect, to do some self-reflection, it is hard to not to be overcritical. So I decided to use some tools from the book Reflective Dialogue from Kato and Mynard. There are many reflection tools that you can find in this book, but I chose these three because I think they suit me very well. Things I want to achieve in life looks like this. This helped me reflect on what is most important to me. This helped me step back from the language learning. Language learning is there, but it's just part of it, not the core of it. So this helped me a lot reflect on what I really wanted to achieve. Viewpoint switching sheet. This is a tool that we give to students who find it difficult to make a decision. So we put the situation here, and then we ask the student to think about 4 people who are important in their lives, and then try to imagine what these people would tell them in this situation. So I did this. So my situation was to learn Japanese or not. And I chose 4 people. One of them is my dad. And I imagined what he would say in this situation. This tool is very powerful because, as I said, you tend to be overcritical of yourself. So if you choose 4 people who love you, who are very gentle to you, you tend to have better perspectives, and you feel understood. So that's why I used it. A letter to myself. Normally, we ask students to do this, to write a letter and then to read the letter only a year after. But I didn't do that. I just decided to write a letter to myself in which I put all the positive things that I think I have, things that I have achieved, places where I've been, and yeah, any positive things. And that was quite powerful as well, because I was able to realize that there were so many things that I did, and there were things that I thought I would never achieve, but I did. There were places I thought I would never be, but I went there. So that was really like an eye opener. So the self-reflections helped me to do some actions and reactions. And I found the real purpose of learning the language beyond I have to do it because I'm in Japan. And I set clearer goals and made a list of vocabulary I wanted to learn. I looked for other resources and activities suitable to me. I practiced with people when possible, and I allowed flexibility, and I acknowledged and celebrated improvement. And this is very important. This is what I do with my student all the time. We always try to acknowledge and celebrate improvement. And fortunately for me, I used different apps in which I can see my progress. Even though I cannot speak Japanese yet, I know that there has been some improvement, and this is really important. I like the quote here. The best thing you can do is to become extremely good at being you. This was cited in Lenny Dam's workshop not a long time ago. It's from Jern Henrik. Dam emphasized the fact that everybody is different and everybody can improve in their own way. And we should respect that when we have lots of students. They may not improve the same way and they may have different styles, but everybody is able to improve. So we have to make sure that students know that. So implications for teachers. From my experience, I think it is important to help learners to develop self-awareness, reflect on their individual language learning histories and motivations, identify their values, relate language learning with their interests, identify their practical and immediate needs, set more specific and realistic goals, recognize and celebrate their improvement, and all of these would involve the promotion of self-reflection. If they do self-reflection, their engagement or re-engagement with language learning will be facilitated. And it is important to acknowledge as well that patience and time are requisites for re-engaging and developing learner interests. There are many definitions of learner autonomy, and most of the time, the definitions include the ability to take charge of one's learning. And only a few definitions include willingness and readiness. But I think willingness and readiness are even more important than the ability, because once you are willing to learn something, you are able to do something about it. So that's it for today. These are the references, and thank you for listening to me.
Please unmute your microphone. Let's give the presenter a round of applause all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's any questions from the participants to the presenter, we still have 4 minutes.
I'll just say thank you again for the nice presentation. I'm somebody who has kind of recently rediscovered Japanese study, and just kind of in the same way. And some of those self-advising techniques, I can agree, are have been super helpful to me in the last 5 or 6 months. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Jason.
Okay, thank you very much all for coming. Please visit our sponsors and the SIGs in the main lobby if you still have time. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to stop recording.